Have you ever wondered, how can we care for our aging parents with love and dignity, without draining the family's finances? In today's world of rising costs, expensive nursing homes and in-home caregivers who are often a gamble, many adult children find themselves feeling trapped and overwhelmed. But perhaps the biggest surprise is this: most elderly people don't need that much. What they truly long for is a meaningful life, someone to talk to, and, most importantly, respect. In the video 3 New Ways to Care for the Elderly, what seem like small, personal stories end up striking a deep chord with viewers, because they reflect the quiet hopes and unspoken longings of so many seniors around the world. The first story features Mr. Sam, a 75-year-old man. After his wife passed away, he tried hiring a caregiver. But after just 2 months he had to let her go. She was a terrible cook and spent all day glued to her phone, he said bitterly. It didn't feel like I hired help, it felt like I had adopted someone. Hoping for a better alternative, he moved into a nursing home. But it wasn't for someone like him, someone who valued freedom. Strict sign-in/out rules, a somber atmosphere, and the quiet passing of residents every week suffocated him. He left after only a few weeks. He then tried living with his son, and it was there he learned a painful truth. Love within a family is real, but living under the same roof is a completely different story. He noticed he had separate dishes, overheard careless words from his young grandchild, and was asked not to do laundry at home because of the smell of old age. These things made him withdraw in silence. The kindness of his children could not erase the deepening feeling of being an outsider in what was once his own home. So Mr. Sam made a decision. He returned to his old house, the one filled with memories of his late wife. At first he didn't know how to cook. But determined to live on his own terms, he taught himself simple meals. Soon he was making steamed buns, stir-fried vegetables, even hearty soups. What moved people most was not the food itself, but how he reclaimed his sense of self, little by little, through small habits he once thought were unnecessary. One early morning in the park while practicing Tai Chi, he met a few seniors just like him, living alone, no longer with their families. Together they created a small WeChat group. Every morning each member sends a simple message: "I'm okay." If someone doesn't check in, another will stop by to make sure they're safe. Over time they built a peer-to-peer care system, where members help each other with hospital visits or errands, for a small fee of 8 yuan, around $1.10 per hour. "I had the flu the other week," Mr. Sam said. "Mr. Zhang went with me to the hospital for 3 days. I paid him 720 yuan. Another time he needed help getting medicine, so I went. We help each other without guilt or pity." What makes Mr. Sam's story so touching isn't just his resilience or wisdom, it's his quiet sense of dignity. He refuses to burden his children, yet also refuses to live a sad, dependent life. He doesn't criticize nursing homes or blame his family. He simply chooses a path that's more fair, more fulfilling, for himself. In a world where the elderly population is growing fast, while their children become busier than ever, community-based self-care models like Mr. Sam's offer a new ray of hope. They create a space where older adults are not abandoned or pitted, but valued, empowered, and given the freedom to truly live. Because in the end, it's not just about adding years to their life. It's about adding life to those years. Story 1. Mr. Samuel, 75 years old. No one understands the elderly better than the elderly themselves. That was what Mr. Samuel, a 75-year-old widower, quietly said as he turned down every invitation to live with his children or move into a nursing home. While many seniors today are willing to trade their independence for security, Mr. Samuel chose the opposite path, living alone, not out of loneliness but with intention, freedom, and fulfillment. Ever since his beloved wife passed away, his small house had fallen into a deep silence. At times he too felt hollow inside. But instead of seeking companionship as friends suggested, he decided to learn how to enjoy his own company. "I don't want someone to fill the void just to eventually leave again," he said. "I need peace, and I've learned to appreciate it." He spent his days tending to his plants, reading books, writing a few lines in his journal at night. Every morning he took a walk around the park and enjoyed tea with a few neighbors. It wasn't loud, it wasn't busy, but it was enough. A life filled with quiet meaning. And he never complained when his children didn't visit often. They had families of their own, careers, responsibilities. He understood. And he chose not to become a burden to anyone. His son, concerned for his well-being, repeatedly urged him to move in or consider a nursing home where someone would always be there. But Mr. Samuel just chuckled. "I'm still healthy. I can cook. I can walk. Why would I go there, to sit around waiting for the end?" The idea of hiring a caregiver didn't sit well with him either. An old man living with a young female stranger? That's not right. It may sound harmless, but it would be uncomfortable in every way. Then one day his daughter, who always understood him best, introduced a new idea, a modern elder support service. Not full-time care, but a flexible, respectful model. 2 home-delivered meals a day. Laundry help twice a week. A camera system linked to his children's phones to ensure safety. And if he didn't like the assigned staff, they'd replace them. No questions asked. At first he hesitated, assuming it would be expensive. But his daughter gently placed a hand on his shoulder and smiled. It's only 2,500 yuan a month, Dad. We'll cover it for you. All you need to do is live happily. That simple sentence made him pause. His heart swelled, with gratitude but also guilt. He didn't want to burden his kids, not in these tough times filled with rising costs and constant pressure. So he made a choice. He'd pay for the service himself from his 6,000 yuan monthly pension. I'm fine. I can still take care of myself. I just want to try something new, to live a little more lightly. This new service didn't make him feel old. If anything, it gave him more freedom and control. No more rushing meals. No more worrying about forgotten laundry. No more fears of being alone during a midnight illness. Mr. Samuel's story isn't a revolution. It's simply proof of a growing truth. Today's elderly don't just want to survive, they want to live. On their own terms. With dignity. Without dependency. Without having to trade their self-respect just because of age. At my age, I don't need someone by my side 24/7, he said with a gentle smile. I just need to live with myself without bothering anyone, and without anyone needing to worry about me. And that is the peace he chose. Living alone, but never lonely. Because he knows he is still loved, still seen, and still living a life, whole and true. Story 2, Mrs. Lily, 67 years old. There's a kind of loneliness that has no name. A silence that hits you when you're standing in your son's house, hearing your granddaughter call out "Grandma," yet feeling like a stranger. That was the ache Mrs. Lily, 67, felt after her husband passed away. She had once been a diligent supervisor at a state-owned garment factory. Her monthly pension, around 4,200 yen, was modest but enough to get by. She had never imagined needing anyone's help. But life, as it often does, brought an unexpected twist. Her husband, the man who'd stood by her for decades through every storm, suddenly passed from a stroke. The home they had built together became a shell of memories, every corner echoing his absence. They say time heals. But for me, every night is a fresh wound, she confessed, her eyes welling with tears. Worried about her living alone, both her son and daughter invited her to come stay. Still reeling from grief, she accepted her son's offer and moved into his home. But the comfort she hoped for didn't last. Within just a few days, she realized she wasn't as welcome as she had imagined. Her daughter-in-law was cold and rarely cooked. Every meal, Mrs. Lily found herself in the kitchen, washing dishes, preparing food. Her young granddaughter, without malice, once asked, "Grandma, why does your cooking taste so weird?" And then walked away with her mother, leaving behind a silence heavier than words. Mrs. Lily didn't blame the child. But she wondered, how could the grown-ups let an elderly woman feel so out of place in her own family? Tension in the house grew daily. She witnessed her son and daughter-in-law arguing, snide remarks from the latter, and a painful silence from her son. After less than 2 weeks, Mrs. Lily packed her suitcase and left, quietly, without resentment. But the sadness lingered. The second time, it was her daughter who called, sincerely asking her to come stay. But this time Mrs. Lily gently refused. "I don't want to feel like an outsider again, not in your home," she said firmly but lovingly. She understood that her children loved her. But their lives were now filled with other priorities, other responsibilities. She, once the pillar of the family, had become a supporting character in a story that had moved on without her. They say aging women often seek emotional warmth, a shoulder to lean on. So, some friends introduced her to Mr. Lewis, a widower living nearby. At first she was hesitant but eventually gave it a try. He suggested they live together, share costs, shop and cook as a team, and even promised her a small gold ring, worth less than 500 yen, as a symbol of companionship. But in the end, those were just empty words. Less than a month into their arrangement, Mr. Lewis revealed his true colors. Controlling, lazy, stingy, wanting not a partner but a free caregiver. "I'm too old to gamble with trust," Mrs. Lily said bitterly. "I'm no one's replacement and certainly not free labor." She walked away without looking back. Then one day at the wedding of a friend's son, She was invited to visit a new concept, a hotel-style apartment complex designed for independent seniors. It was clean, cozy, with daily housekeeping, 2 hot meals a day, and complete freedom to come and go. It wasn't cheap, over 3,800 yen a month, but with her pension and small help from her children, it was doable. People ask why I live in a hotel instead of with my kids. But I'm happy, because for the first time I found a place that truly feels like mine. No judgment. No need to tiptoe around. Just a simple, clean, and dignified life. She sold her old apartment and called her children to share the news. I don't need much. If each of you can send me 1,000 yen a month, that's more than enough. I can handle the rest. Her voice was calm, unwavering, because she had come to understand a powerful truth. Happiness isn't found in relying on others. It's found in having the courage to live life on your own terms. Story 3. When generations live under one roof. When parents grow old, they don't need their children to serve them every meal or wash every piece of laundry. They just want to be loved, without becoming a burden. It's a simple truth, yet one that lies at the heart of countless family tensions, especially when elderly parents move in with their adult children. In many cultures, multi-generational living is seen as a beautiful tradition, 3 generations under one roof, sharing warmth and wisdom. But behind closed doors, this setup can also become the source of quiet heartbreak. Elderly parents believe they are helping, but are sometimes seen as interfering. Children want to repay their parents with care, but often don't know how to do it in a way that feels just right. The generational gap isn't just about technology or lifestyle, it's also a gap in how we love and express care. So how can families live together without conflict? How can a shared home become a place filled with laughter, not sighs? The first key is clear and honest communication. Don't assume that family members will automatically understand each other just because they're related. When parents move in, both sides should sit down for an open conversation. Talk about daily routines. Discuss financial expectations. Define personal boundaries. Who's cooking? Who's grocery shopping? Can parents lock their bedroom door? Is it okay to have friends over? These little details may seem minor, but when left unspoken, they can quietly grow into resentment. The second key is learning to respect personal space. Even when living together, everyone still needs a room of their own, literally and emotionally. Elderly parents may feel hurt when their children are too busy to have dinner together or chat every evening. But this isn't a lack of love, it's just the reality of modern life and its relentless demands. At the same time, adult children need to understand that their parents are used to a slower, more traditional rhythm. Change doesn't come easy at that age. Understanding and compassion for these differences is the only path to peace. Another important point, parents should maintain independence as much as they can. Don't surrender completely to the idea that, my kids will take care of everything. Even in retirement, seniors should pursue their own joys, gardening, reading, exercising, or joining local senior groups. It keeps their body active, their mind sharp, and most importantly, it preserves that vital feeling of being useful, of still mattering. Because aging shouldn't mean fading away. Also, living together doesn't mean taking over. Parents must resist the urge to micromanage their children's parenting, spending, or housekeeping. Let the next generation write their own story just as you once did with yours. Unwanted advice, critical comments, or old-fashioned expectations often cause more harm than help. And above all, the deepest connection between generations is built on mutual empathy and gratitude. Parents should thank their children for opening their homes, adjusting their lives, and making space, both physically and emotionally. And children should never forget that it was their parents who once stayed up all night during their fevers, who worked tirelessly to raise them with unconditional love. No one is perfect in the role of parent or child. But if you can still share a meal together, still hear each other's voices in the same house, that is already a blessing. And if we can be just a little more patient, a little more kind, then living together won't feel like a challenge. It will feel like a journey of healing, understanding, and love. When children grow up, they need freedom. When parents grow old, they need respect. In the end, we all need to be heard, whether we're young and busy or old and quiet. Creating harmony in multi-generational homes. Perhaps the greatest fear of growing old isn't the wrinkles or the silver hair. It's the feeling of being forgotten in a world that's moving too fast. One day, as your children grow up, you realize the dinner table no longer has a seat for you. Your voice fades into the background of a house that once felt like yours. Aging doesn't come overnight. It creeps in through forgotten stoves left on, a midnight cough no one hears, or the puzzled look of a grandchild asking, "Grandma, why don't you understand me?" And yet, the video 3 New Ways to Care for the Elderly offers a different perspective, one filled with hope and humanity. It tells not only 3 moving stories of elderly individuals, but also delivers an important message. Elderly people don't have to live in nursing homes. They don't have to be burdens on their families. They can choose to live independently, with dignity, with support, if society is kind enough and families are willing to listen. What's surprising is this: change doesn't always come from sweeping reforms. It often begins with small, warm-hearted initiatives. Take for example Mr. Sam's WeChat group, a network of elderly individuals living alone who check in with each other every morning. They remind one another to take their meds, cook porridge, even accompany each other to the hospital. They've set up a light, fair compensation system. Just a few $100 per month for peace of mind, mutual care, and that one good morning message that could save a life. Or consider the 65-year-old man who refused to live with his children, refused to move into a care home, and even turned down full-time caregivers. What mattered to him wasn't having someone to do everything for him, it was preserving his daily rhythm, writing a few lines, watering plants, cooking, reading. He embraced a new part-time care model: meal deliveries, regular laundry service, and a camera linked to his children's phones for safety. It was simple, affordable, and most of all, respectful of his independence. And then there's the story of Mrs. Lily, who faced emotional coldness while living with her daughter-in-law, and disappointment when she tried living with a male companion who only wanted free help. Eventually, she found joy in a senior-friendly hotel-style apartment. Warm meals, privacy, daily housekeeping, and, above all, respect. She didn't ask her kids for money. Just a small monthly contribution from each. Because she didn't want to just get by, she wanted to live with dignity. These aren't just stories. They're quiet reminders to every family and every community that older adults aren't relics of the past. They're a meaningful part of the present. And caring for them shouldn't be an obligation we dread. It can be an opportunity to rediscover compassion, patience, and love. True happiness in old age doesn't come from endless financial support. It comes from being allowed to live with value, not pushed aside, not labeled as extra, not silenced in their own home. And to make that happen, we don't need a national policy. We just need to start with small human gestures. A morning check-in. A weekly phone call. The freedom for them to live life their way. Because in the end, the elderly aren't afraid of loneliness. They're afraid of being seen as inconvenient. They're not afraid of illness, but of being ignored. Not afraid of death, but of living a life where no one listens anymore. So let's build a world where the elderly don't feel indebted but feel worthy. Where caregiving isn't just a task, but an act of genuine love. Where aging isn't the fading shadow of life, but the quiet, golden light of sunset, glowing gently in its own way. Thank you for watching. If you didn't enjoy this video, comment 0. If you found it helpful, comment 1. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more content that supports your health and well-being. See you in the next video.